oh, here we go.
I know, that's what San Francisco will do you.
Oh. I think we are now recording, guys. So good morning. It's Monday morning, so I hope everybody had a chance to have some outdoor play, socially distancing, of course. But good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us this sunny Monday morning. Today is May the 4th. I'm Melissa Pache, CEO at the Whistler Chamber of Commerce. I would like to acknowledge that we are having this virtual meeting on the shared unceded traditional territories of the Squamish-Lillooet Nations. We honor their language, culture, land, and traditions. I would like to thank all of our members for your continued support. The Chamber receives through your annual memberships and commitments, enabling us to do the important work that we need in a series of advocacy. And also for the Municipality of Whistler in her new role, Chief Administration Officer Ginny Cullen. The purpose of the series of webinars is to ensure that you, our members, and the broader business community in Whistler have the opportunity to have who will provide guidance and support. So welcome.
Did you
Welcome everyone to
lose?
your question. You can do this by going to Q&A, which is at the bottom of your screen. Simply type in your question. You can also hit the like button to upvote a question, which will then automatically be placed the most voted at the top. So since March 15th, wow, March 15th is a pinnacle day for us here in our community. We have seen nearly 100% decline in visitation, experienced the closure of approximately 80% of our businesses, who in many cases have seen 100% decline in revenue. Since then, the government has released several support measures, such as Canada's emergency wage subsidy, which happened last week, pardon me, commercial rent relief, and the business credit availability program. And we are starting to see some life come back to our village. We are about to enter into the recovery period, or what I've heard some people call the period of reimagination. So today we are honored to have with us from the resort community of Whistler's Honorable Mayor Jack Crompton. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Again, Ginny Cullen. Good morning, Ginny. And your first, I hope, of many webinars, and hopefully we'll see you in person one of these days. But welcome to Whistler. Welcome to the Resort Municipality of Whistler. And we look forward to hearing from you in just a few moments. So Jack, of course, needs no introduction, right? We've agreed to that.
Sure, yeah.
Ginny, I'll give you a little bit of an introduction, but Jack's obviously going to do a more in-depth introduction for you in just a few minutes. But Ginny brings 2 decades of leadership experience managing large teams and complex projects. She has established successful operations and financial reporting processes, strategic planning and development frameworks, as well as progressive employee and community engagement. Most recently, Ginny was Chief Operating Officer for BGC Engineering. Welcome, Ginny. Jack, take it away.
Thanks, Melissa. It's nice to be here, and I look forward to people's questions later on. I thought I'd just give sort of a rundown of where we find ourselves. March 16th, the RMOW closed all non-essential facilities and programs, and sort of in alignment with what was happening at the provincial government and the federal government, that sort of care and attention and focus on health and safety increased over time. And as you've seen, as you've been around town, the impact on our business community and the community at large has been devastating. And I think we've seen that obviously around the world, but we're particularly impacted as a place who is focused primarily on tourism. And the RMOW has been working hard to ensure that we are working with our health authority and others to ensure that the health and safety of our community is the priority. We've been focused on, we've done some work with the Whistler Community Services Society, moving the food bank to the conference center, which many of you probably have heard. We've spent significant time adjusting the way processes happen. We closed Municipal Hall It's been a long process, and we find ourselves now in the position where our Prime Minister and our Premier are giving us direction that this coming week on Wednesday we'll hear a little bit more about opening. So it's a bit of a shift in frame from focus on closing to potentially a focus on opening and how that's done. But I think what's been very clear all along, especially from Dr. Henry, that when we see an opening of society and an opening of the economy, it will be done in a manner that takes us to a new normal. We won't be returning to December 2019. We'll be turning to, she continues to say, some modification of what we're experiencing today. So we will, I think, be offering a tourism experience in a socially, physically distanced way, which I think is something that's challenging to get our minds around. You know, one of the nature of hospitality is, as Melissa knows from just offering it in this community through the chamber and other places, is warm, it's welcoming, it's close. And we've become very good at that over the last 4 years. And I think it's a challenge to our community to understand how we be hospitable in a physically distanced world. And so that's one of the things that I'm really paying a lot of attention to as we move forward, is how do we adjust to new normal. We've been spending a lot of time, or I've been spending a lot of time, understanding what the programs that will support our community are. Majority of those are coming from the federal government, some from the provincial government as well, and ensuring that people in our community and organizations and companies have access to them and understand them. I've been releasing videos that sort of share where we're at in the process as well as I can, and then just staying close to council on where we're moving forward. We're revisiting our budget on Tuesday. As I've said to a lot of people, COVID-19 has left no part of our society untouched, and it certainly hasn't left any part of our organization untouched, as you can see as you walk through the village and see no people. So I expect in the next couple of days we'll hear from the Premier, but then as May carries on, we'll start turning our mind as a community towards what it means to move into recovery mode. And I don't think that will be quick. I think that that's a long process. I think that that's something that we're going to have to do in a coordinated fashion. And I think it's something that we're going to have to stay very current on. Everything's changed so fast, start to finish, that it feels like if you miss a news cycle, you miss something of great importance to the way things are done in community. Well, all that's been happening, we were, partway through the process of hiring our new Chief Administrative Officer. And we were extremely excited to be able to hire and announce Ginny Cullen, Ginny, to the community. But one of the things that it meant is that she was dropping right into the middle of a pandemic to run the municipality, which is, she's one of few people I think that will do that. But she did have a good 4 weeks of sitting in on the EOC, and which is our Emergency Operations Center. Sorry, I should have said that. So one of the things we did very early was struck an Emergency Operations Center, which allows access in different ways to provincial resources, and allows us to do things in a more sort of efficient fashion. And Ginny was able to sit in and really get a sense for how the organization and the people in the organization operated as a bit of a fly on the wall, which I think is a unique opportunity. She's now been in the job for 2 weeks, and it's been a lot of fun having her. I think she's already getting a sense for how the organization works, and I will welcome her here and thank her for joining me today on this call and turn it over to Ginny Cullen. Over to you.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to be here, Melissa. And it's nice to being able to sit in front of the business community and hopefully understand a little bit more about the experience that you've all been going through in this pandemic. I thought maybe I'd just give you a little bit about my history and background and give an outline about what I've been focusing on and what kind of are the next areas to focus on going forward. So I grew up in Vancouver. I'm third generation Vancouverite. My grandfather was born on 3rd and Larch in Vancouver. And my family's been coming up to Whistler for decades. In two years ago, myself and my husband and 2 daughters moved here from Gibson's. So we were in Gibson's for 10 years before. And we were really excited to be in a community where we had so many buddies to play outside with. So I'm very excited to be in Whistler. I am coming in at an incredibly challenging time for sure, but it's also interesting. And although I'm getting up to speed on a lot of content and context, it also feels vaguely, well, actually strangely familiar at the same time. And that's just my experience in consulting. It's a fast-paced environment, it's fluid, things are changing all the time, more information's coming in. And so I feel like I've been here before in a strange way, and just working through kind of how do you remain comfortable and competent in the unknown? How do you sit in the uncertain? And being able to focus on what you can control. So that's kind of the approach that I'm bringing to the situation right now. And also being able to identify what are the critical path items. So what is most important for us to focus on in this given time. And that really is kind of a strong background or it's strong in my background in engineering consulting. I'd also say that my previous work in developing purpose-driven strategy was always built around building trust and creating positive outcomes in communities. So that's what drew me to the role in Whistler. I thought that it was aligned with how I saw the world in terms of being able to contribute to a community and make good things happen. And so I'm excited to be here and also be aligning my work effort with a local community versus where I was before, which was much more global. In terms of the RMOW, like Jack mentioned, I've been involved with the EOC for 6 weeks. I've been in the role for 2 weeks. And it was really inspiring to watch the team in play and watch how calm and clear the thinking is in making things happen. So the first thing being making sure all the core municipal services were up and running, and then ensuring that the social services and the most vulnerable in our community were taken care of. So that was the initial focus and will be ongoing as long as it's needed. The second focus that we're moving to is around parks and trails and the valley Stroll, the valley trails and the village stroll. So how do we provide guidance and set it up so that it can be used safely with the physical distancing measures in place? And that is requiring a lot of careful planning, but also adjustment to, how do we do things in a way that isn't the way we've done them in the past? So that's been, over the past couple of weeks, how do we make that happen so that we can get outside in a socially distanced way, as weird as that sounds. And then the third thing is just what we're doing today is focusing on, working with our resort partners and engaging with local businesses to start to plan and figure out what our approach is going to be for community revitalization. And, how are we going to respond as the economy starts to ramp up? Because it will start to ramp up at some point. So how do we prepare for that, and how do we make sure that the municipality is providing the support where it needs to? I will touch on the budget just very quickly, and that is we've been spending a lot of time the last couple of weeks trying to find a careful balance between reducing our costs in relation to revenue loss with COVID. How do we adjust to that? But at the same time, maintaining projects and key service levels at a a level that allows us to react and respond in a proactive way to the recovery when it comes. So that's a tricky balance, and there'll be more on that tomorrow if you want to tune in to the council meeting. And then finally, just, yeah, happy to be here in front of you. I know that local businesses are hurting, and really am interested in hearing about the experiences. And I think that beyond the EOC support, I think the RMOW is somewhere where we can help facilitate connections within the community and strengthen the resilience between the businesses to help have a coordinated response to the economic situation that we find ourselves in.
Thank you, Ginny. Well, welcome. What a great time. My gosh, you've just the little bit that I've had the experience to work with you, it's been really great. We've had some phone calls together, and you've definitely taken the reins on quite solidly. It's been amazing working with you. So welcome. Thank you, Jack, for your update. I've got a couple questions in the bank here before I jump into the live Q&A. And one of them, I think you touched a little bit on it, both of you did. It is really the biggest question on our community's mind right now is, what is the RMOW's plan to reopen that economy? And I know, Ginny, you had said that we need to focus on what's most important, and maybe we'll start with what is most important as we look at that reopening of our community, in your opinion.
I think that what's really important is for us to be coordinated in our efforts. So we need to be sharing information. We need to be learning as much as we can. Like I said, it's a fluid situation, and so we cannot plan our way into this. We actually have to be learning and be adjusting and implementing on a much faster level than we have in the past. So I'd say in terms of what we're focusing on right now, it's how do we get our teams and partners kind of in that mindset so that we are adjusting and learning and observing as we go.
That's great. Jack, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've been very, or at least one of my focuses is ensuring that I don't pretend I'm a doctor. I don't pretend I'm a scientist. We've got a medical health officer and a provincial health officer for a reason, because they understand the data and evidence that they're using to direct our province. And we are, I think, we do very well when we take that seriously. And so I watch Dr. Henry every day at 3, watch the Prime Minister every morning. And, you know, it used to be that we would get sort of a heads up on what the, late breaking information would be before it came out. And now the latest breaking information comes out with the Prime Minister in the morning and Dr. Henry in the afternoon. And so, in my opinion, what is most important for us as a community and for us as the municipality is to ensure that we understand the direction that we're receiving. I think what the Premier will say on Wednesday will probably be fairly broad, but I think it will give us good direction as to how to think about opening, and then ensure that we're well connected to Bank of Coastal Health and others who provide the best information that can help us launch. And then I think we've been here before, not in the middle of a pandemic by any means, but we've been through really difficult, challenging things in the past. I think about 1981, interest rates are 20+%, and we're half built on building the village. That took a good 3, 4, 5 years to dig ourselves out of. I think in 2008, we were protected a little bit by the games, but that took time. And I think that what is critical in this whole process is focus on the task, but also patience with it. I think that this will be, I've said to a number of people, a long walk in the same direction. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and we're going to need all of the creativity and energy that we can muster in the effort. But we've been successful in the past, and we'll be successful.
I hope my internet's working okay. It's a bit patchy at my end, so I apologize. I'm not sure what's happening here.
Am I patchy?
No, it's been something that's been going on my side, so hopefully things are okay, but we'll keep going. I'm going to go to the questions on the Q&A. So Ben Thomas, longtime local here in Whistler. Many local support clubs have lost grants and have very low registration with so much uncertainty, WORCA, soccer, etc. Has there been any talk of strategies to support these nonprofit clubs when things do reopen? Is that something that the RMOW has talked about? Is it something that is more on a provincial, maybe potentially federal level as well? Any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, what Ben's referring to is that at our last meeting, we took the funding from the community enrichment program that's generally shared amongst environmental groups, sports, arts, social services, and we pivoted the vast majority of that funding towards their social services so that we can keep families, keep the food bank sharing food, keep those organizations that are going to support the social needs of our community funded. And that was a challenging decision because I don't for a second believe that organizations like WORCA and the soccer club and others aren't crucial to the health of a community. They are who we are. They've built this town. And so one of the things that we have talked about is that it's not off the table to reconsider community enrichment program funding again later in the year. But at this point, our focus is on social services and how we can ensure that those organizations have the funding they need, because they're the ones that are active. As Ben says, soccer club isn't taking registrations at this time, and so that's something we might come back to.
Right. Okay. From Priyanka Lewis, who owns several small businesses in the community on the food and beverage side. Do you believe the summer business will gain any traction with rubber traffic? As a small business owner, I am unsure of when I would look to open up our location, as the potential opening would have to coincide with need. I know that's a really tough question to answer, as we're still unsure what the province is going to do, and the health minister is going to say. But Ginny, do you want to answer? Do you have any comments on that one, just to bring you into the loop? And or is that?
Yeah, I'd say it's still difficult for us to be able to answer that as well. But I would say that, as we are able to reopen parks in a phased way and put things in place so that we can have more people outside, that then becomes an indicator for when we're ready to welcome more people to the community. But until we have more guidance provincially for when that can happen, we don't really know what the timing is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's especially true for restaurants. One of the things that's there are a few things in our economy that have actually been closed by the provincial health officer, and as Pri knows, restaurants are one of those.
Yeah.
And so restaurants won't be able to open at all until such time as the provincial government gives that clear direction around restaurants. My understanding is that there's work actively going on and that there may well be direction provided shortly. But until that direction comes, it's very difficult to have a sense for what opening will look like. I will say, I think that our community needs to be prepared for significant rubber tire traffic. Mm-hmm. As other nations have opened, the drive market has been significant. If you look at Chinese national parks, there was huge amounts of visitation to those places, and I think it's something that we need to prepare ourselves for, because I believe it'll happen fairly quickly. We will find ourselves with a high degree of drive traffic, people looking to be outside. They've been in their homes and they've been in their apartment spaces in Metro Vancouver for a long time, and they're going to look to find places where they can experience fresh air and they can go for a hike and they can go for a bike ride. International borders closed. Can't really get on a ferry in the same way that you would have been able to previously. And so coming north will be something that I expect to see a lot of people do. And so we need to, as a community, work hard to be prepared for that. Because another point is that likely there won't be the same number of businesses open at that time. So there'll be a lot of people sort of something to do, and we need to be ready as a community to manage that.
Right. And I guess one of the questions then that would be asked is really how do we keep our community safe in the next few weeks as we begin to open up the economy a little bit. And I think, again, we're having conversations this week with EPI and stakeholders and things. So I know that we're preparing. We may not have the answers right now, but perhaps maybe Ginny or Jack, if you have any comments on that, as far as any kind of planning that has been done so far or future planning.
Well, the key on that is definitely those directions that have been provided by the provincial health officer, the 6 foot distance between people, to stay with your household. And I thought it was interesting last week how Dr. Henry talked about, we're starting to put our minds to how we can spend time with other households in a physically distanced manner. And that's something certainly to get our minds around, and it does give hope and light at the end of the tunnel. It also creates new and unique challenges, because with that are families who have immunocompromised people who live with them. And when our society opens and we start doing more of that connection beyond our household, those families need to pull in even further. And I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday around how crucial it is to respect that space with other people, because you don't know what is happening in their family. It's a little bit like, oh, don't worry, my dog's friendly. Well, maybe I just am allergic to dogs. And I feel like that's the same sort of thing that we need to do here, is ensure that we're respecting the space that other people have, because we don't know what's happening in their family. And Dr. Henry's been very clear in what those kind of recommendations are. And I think you've seen us try our best to communicate that information through signage and through active management in parks, that the goal is to live a new way and communicate how that's done. But that new way is something that's definitely given to us by experts like that.
Right, that makes sense. Thank you, Jack. Jackie has a question. As you know, our municipality is uniquely reliant on tourism, which is going to be one of the slowest industries to recover economically from the crisis, which means that many businesses will need longer term support with things such as rent, wage subsidies, and deferred expenses. What, if anything, is the Armwood W doing on a provincial and federal level to ensure that this happens? For example, Qs ends on June 6th. Do you know if this is going to be extended? I can add a little bit to that the Chamber has been advocating to extend that. We've sent a letter to the government to ask for an extension on that, and they are seriously looking at it. And I wonder, Ginny or Jack, if there's been any movement on your side, if you've heard anything differently, or what has been done on your side.
So I've had a number of conversations with some of the similar people that you've been having conversations with. Same conversation.
Exactly.
Please extend the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy specific to tourism. And it seems that advocacy seems to be getting some traction and consideration. I have the real sense that there will be some additional support to our industry. The Prime Minister talked about it again today. And my conversations with my federal counterparts are that they recognize the challenges that the tourism sector faces and how unique those challenges are. They're taking them seriously, and they're preparing supports that will be in addition to what else is out there. And I think that that's one of the municipality's primary tasks in this process is to
is.
advocate for ourselves. Whistler's unique in that we are, you know, when we're busy, there are 3 times as many people in our town who don't live in our town than who do. And that kind of challenge, I think, is something that the both levels of government are getting their minds around. How are resorts different than your typical town? And it's something that when we do our jobs well, they understand our situation better. And kudos to you. I mean, I think that you're doing a very good job of helping in that advocacy and ensuring that they understand the unique challenges.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a conversation with Minister Joly on Thursday last week, and Tony Metcalf with the Armwood and myself pulled together some really good intel for that conversation. And it was interesting to talk to Minister Joly, because one of the reasons she was calling us here in Whistler was because the first thing she said was she recognizes Whistler as Canada's gem, and that we are very hard hit by this economic downturn, by the pandemic, and is seriously taking into consideration what it would look like long-term for us as a recovery. So we know that the government at all levels is looking at not just nationally what that recovery looks like, but because we are and have consistently provided $500 million in tax revenue to the government, they are looking at it as Whistler as a place where they really want to focus on. So let's see where those conversations go. And I know that the Armwood has done some great inroads to speaking with government about that as well. So it's been a great collaboration with you, Ginny and Tony especially, on that path. So we are getting there. Like you said, both of you have said, it's going to take some time and it's going to take some patience for all of us to really understand. It's not like the doors are going to open and everybody's coming back. So time's going to be on our, may not be on our side, but we're going to get there. Joel Chevalier, the question he has is, on the surface, the food bank looks like it's getting a lot of community support. How prepared is the food bank to support residents in need over the next few months? Ginny, have you worked on this portfolio? Is this something that?
Yeah, it's been a key focus of the EOC as we started and ramped up. I believe the municipality had, I think we had 12 people at one point, and maybe it's down to 8 people now, just helping provide support in whatever way possible to make sure that they have the resources they need on a personnel basis. I know that there have been several fundraising efforts to make sure the food bank is well resourced from a financial point of view. And I'd say we're continuing to work with them to figure out how we make sure that this essential service continues in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very important. An anonymous attendee, can you let us know how much warning you are going to give the business community prior to formally opening and welcoming back visitors in order for us to be prepared? Again, I think that's going to come out of the health officials, as well as what the Premier might say. But Jack, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I think it's important to note again that Dr. Henry closed very few businesses, and some of the businesses in our community are still open, and that is a decision that's been very clearly made by the provincial government to keep various sectors open. It's not our call on sit-down restaurants, on gatherings of over 50 people, and based on how fast things are moving at the provincial government, I expect it to be an announcement of the Premier or of Dr. Henry at 3 p.m. At one of their presentations. And so I think that we need to work hard to be prepared for that from a business side, from municipal side, and then also from a community psyche perspective. I think that we need to put our minds to what it means to have more people in our town. It's been extremely difficult, obviously, to have our businesses sort of close down in 4 days. It's also created this sort of town that's our own and there's no people in it. I think it's going to take some adjustment to getting used to people coming back.
We agree. Yeah.
But I would say we're putting our minds to ensuring that when that direction comes, we're ready to respond. So
Right.
it won't be. I don't think it'll be we turn the close sign to open and say, "Game on, everybody come to Whistler." The truth is, people are within their rights to visit our town right now.
Right.
Yeah,
And they do. Yeah, go ahead, Ginny.
Yeah, I was going to add that I think the dial analogy is really important. Like we had an on-off switch with our parks at the beginning. They were open and then they were closed, and now we're actually working to create a dial so that we're slowly opening it as we can start to relax some of the restrictions that have been on us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say also one of the things that RMOW is looking at and considering is that we have a very engaged local population to begin with, and so we have an opportunity to experiment and learn based on these measures before we get inundated, and so making sure we do that. So a good example would be the parks. What is working and what isn't, and I think it's important for the community to be providing feedback back as to this trail was one way and it didn't seem to work, or that kind of thing.
That's good to know. Next question from Jackie. Given the large strain that the bike park typically puts on our medical center, do you think they will be able to support its reopening this summer? I think we have to understand whether it will be reopened or not, depending on what, again, the health officials are saying, and also what the premier is going to state with reopening. But have you heard anything about that, either one?
No.
I don't think so either. I think we need to wait and see.
Healthcare system at this point has a significant amount of capacity available to communities all over the province. My brother's a doctor at Peace Arts in White Rock, and he says their hospital is empty. Apparently, heart attacks are down 30% for some. Because
they're staying home. Everybody's staying home.
It's
I guess
the world is a different place than it was.
It is. Yeah. No, I agree. What is next steps in unintended impact of closing parks that have pushed people to park on roads and access recreation areas that are less suited? So I guess from safe environments, are we seeing more people come out of safe environments, and are we creating unsafe environments? Is I think how I'm reading that question.
Yeah, I know that there's issues with, there's a parking lot closed near Function, and there's a car has been parking on the road, and that's not, we don't want to be creating a further unsafe condition. So we'll be looking at that. I would say that this is an unprecedented situation, and our ops and planning department are learning as we go as well. And so we need to adjust as we see things that aren't working, and just know that we are trying to get the right amount of communication and guidance out there so that people in the community can be using these outdoor facilities in a way that feels comfortable, because there's anxiety with going outside and being in contact with people. So the more that we can provide guidance, I think the easier it will be for everyone to be in the same area together.
Next question from Ben as well. Has the RMOW discussed a shop local campaign, and or what could the RMOW do to support shopping locally?
I'd say we haven't discussed that yet, but as we turn our focus towards how we're supporting local businesses, that would definitely be something we would need to talk about.
Yeah, we can work together and collaborate on that, along with Tourism Whistler, because Tourism Whistler's they have a fantastic website that's kept up to date with restaurants and places that are open. In fact, last night we went to where did we go? Grabbed some burgers and went to La Cantina. So it's all through that website, so you can see what's open and what's not. But yes, we'll definitely talk about that and how we can roll that out. Will COVID impact the housing development plans with Cheakamus Phase 2? Jack?
It hasn't at this point, but it may. I mean, we're continuing to push ahead at the WDC, but certainly the financial impacts on our community are as yet sort of quantified, because there's still things are still changing and changing quickly. But I'm of the opinion that housing and investing in housing during this time is an important direction, one that we should carry on with. And I think that is shared by many, but it's a decision that's not made by just one person. It's made by a group of people. And so there'll be some work put into it. But at this point, there hasn't been any stops put on the process of
right. Right. I'm jumping into the chat room. Dave Williamson, I'll call him out. Way to go, Dave. He's in the wrong window, but I'm going to ask the question anyways. Hope everybody's okay with that.
Yeah.
Jack, Ginny, are you familiar with the Allied Golf Association of BC Best Practices? It was accepted by the province on April 20th and is a big part of why golf is open now. Should the RMOW do something like that for trails and recreation, so we're ready when relaxation arrives?
Wow, what was that? Did everybody hear that?
What did you hear?
Like, anyway.
That's okay.
I would say that's what we're trying to put in place for parks and trails, for sure. I think that it may not be as simple as we have these guidelines in place, now it's all open. I think it's more about, we can now open these pieces. And while we do that, we're going to be learning what's working, what isn't working, and then adjusting, and then figuring out whether we can expand that a bit more.
And we've been, I sit on a council, we've talked about this in our chats, on a council with TIA BC and Go2HR, working on sort of guidelines for health and safety protocols for the hospitality and tourism industry. And the intention is exactly that, looking at all the different industries within the tourism and hospitality to ensure that the right protocols are set in place, sent over to the Ministry of Health. So then that goes to the individual industries within that. So it's 9:30. I still haven't had my coffee. So they're coming, and I think that's where the industries are going to be able to self-support each other by having those regulations in place. So that, I think, is going to become more and more clear as more industries do set up those protocols. Do you agree? Is that what you're seeing out there as well? So I thought, yeah.
I mean, if you on the provincial on the website, gov.bc.ca has got each of the orders that have been provided by sector, and then all of the recommendations that have been given by sector. And certainly those are extremely useful, because they provide a step-by-step on exactly how a sector should respond, some required to, others encouraged to.
Yeah. Sean Easton has a question. Thank you for your insights today. In regard to the food bank, Whistler Community Services Society, have been fiscally impacted with the closure of the Rebuild It and Reuse It centers. Is a fee for service model between the WCSS and the RMOW a funding option that can be considered to ensure we keep open this essential service?
Yeah, I don't think anything's off the table, but certainly the model as it is right now is what we want to get back to. To me, the fact that our waste stream turns into revenue to invest in the social needs of our community is one of those sort of big pieces that have really created the kind of Whistler that we all love. And so the goal is definitely to get back to having to rebuild it and reuse it open and funding.
I've got lots of donations in my room ready to go. So please, everybody out there that's listening, don't throw anything away. Keep it, because when they do reopen, we can certainly, I'm sure they'll have a phased approach themselves, but they're going to need our support once again to stack up the shelves again. So keep that thing, keep that open.
It has been discussed at the EOC level, and I believe we were talking about someone had generously offered a warehouse and function to be able to store goods. So I guess all I can say is that is definitely something that's being considered, and it is a concern as to how do we bridge this gap right now. And there's been some really creative solutions that have been coming up and brought forward to the EOC and the RMOW. So yeah, we'll continue to figure out how do we bridge that gap with them.
It's interesting because it's all new times for all of us. So a lot of these questions remain unanswered until we really do have a really good idea and light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you for that. Ben, it's interesting. We have some very vocal people this morning, the same ones over and over. So it's good to hear. Ben Thomas, any update on timeline for OCP?
We've never been closer.
Ah, there you go. Do you like that, Ben?
I feel like I've said that like so many times, but we're getting close, and hopefully that's something that will be done soon.
Right. And Pri, is there any more info on commercial rent relief program? I checked this morning. I haven't seen anything, and I haven't had a chance to speak with Patrick this morning. Have either one of you heard any more on that?
No, this is related to if your landlord has a mortgage. Yeah,
I believe so. I'm not sure if that's what she's speaking of, but I would suspect so. It's about the mortgage, unmortgaged potentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I have heard that there was work being done on that, but not any announcements today. Certainly the Prime Minister didn't announce anything.
No,
today.
I didn't hear anything either. We have a very quiet chat room right now, so I think we'll take this opportunity to close it down. Are there any final comments that, Ginny, you would like to make before we close out? And then Jack, we can have you finish. Oh, hang on, Sarah Strother, last one. Sarah, you just got in there in the nick of time. You okay to have one more question? So here we go. Sarah, can you explain the role, tenure, and selection of the Economic Continuity Group? And what other groups have been formed by the RMOW to address business issues? So we'll take that as a last question, and then we'll close it out with that. Jack, do you want to take that?
So the Economic Continuity Group has a phone call once. I mean, actually, why don't you answer that question?
Well, thanks,
I'm not on that. I'm about to answer a question.
So so that particular group right now, as it is, and it will, I'm sure, because it is run in partnership with the RMOW and the Whistler Chamber, is a group of the stakeholders in individual industries that talk really around where we're all at. And keeping a close contact with what's actually happening on the ground. And so without speaking to Tony, who really runs that program or that conversation, is how to utilize that group to then move forward into the opening of our, or reopening of our economy. So right now, that's where conversations are really quite fluid. There's no set agenda to it. It's actually, for those of you that have been on 12 at 12s in the past, where we run those advocacy sessions, it's really about what's top of mind, what are some of the issues happening on ground level, and then how can we all support each other through either finding conversations with ministers or help each other through the process. So that's really what it's about so far. And then the next stage, like you and I talked about, is we're talking today on EPI, really about what that next phase looks like. And then we can do a broader conversation around what recovery looks like in our community. I think that sort of answers that question as clearly as I can at this point anyway. So it's been a great way to, for us as a chamber to understand where to take our advocacy. And I know Tony and John that are on the call feel the same way.
And I think that group's done a really great work sort of preparing the ground for the broader conversation that it'll be largely an economic one, but it'll also be about people and about place. You know, it'll be about how this impacts us for a long time moving forward as a community. And it won't just be, although it will be largely, but it won't just be business owners, it'll also be families, it'll be
absolutely
community groups. It'll be a broader conversation that'll include organizations like AWARE and Western Community Services Society and others. And I think that that conversation and that work is pretty near term.
Agreed.
Obviously, Melissa just mentioned that today the Economic Partnership Initiative Committee, which is a committee that has been meeting for a long time and puts its mind to the economic direction of our town, it will be considering where we find ourselves. We'll be informed by the work of the Economic Continuity group, and hopefully will give some shape and direction to.
Yeah, agreed. So on that note, we will close this off with sort of some last comments or thoughts from both of you. Ginny, do you want to kick us off on some last thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say that the more that local businesses can share experiences with Jack and I, and also provide ideas and solutions for what we're seeing, like that is really helpful, and we'll be listening for that and collecting those things and implementing where it makes sense. So please keep communicating in whatever communication pathway makes sense,
Right.
because we need the thoughts and understanding and information from the whole community.
Agreed. Yeah. And Jack, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'm hopeful. This has been hard. I think this has been hard for businesses for sure, but people, families, the fabric of our town. It's interesting I often hear people say we're all in this together, and that's true, but we're physically unable to sort of spend time in those groups, and that's strange, and it's disconcerting, and it's confusing. Been interesting to talk to my kids about what this is all like. For them, they're unfamiliar, and they think that, well, I have a 17-year-old, and talking to her about it, there's some sort of sense that, well, this is so strange. And generally in my life, I've been able to point to something else that's been similar to it. It's strange to me too. Like, I feel like I'm turned inside out. I think we all do.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is a big project ahead of us around community building, community rebuilding, around looking for ways to ensure that our neighborhoods and our community groups are well supported. I think back to the question that Ben Thomas asked about WORCA and the Worcester Youth Soccer Club, and then the arts groups. Those are fundamental supports to a healthy community. We need them. And so this will be a long and incredibly important process. And it's one that I just want to finish by saying I'm hopeful about.
Yeah.
I think that we can come out on the other side of this a better Whistler, as difficult as that is to imagine. So the word that rolls around in my head all the time is this idea of a just recovery. What does it mean for us to come out the other side of this a better Whistler, better Whistlerites, stronger families, stronger community? And I don't think that that is a small goal. I think that's a huge goal, and it's a huge challenge, and it's not self-evident that we'll get there, because it takes work, it takes big ideas, and it takes a community. And so I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be an interesting year ahead of us.
Yeah,
it'll take all of us, all hands on deck. Everybody.
Well said. So recovery and reimagination really is what it is. And it gives us that, on a positive note, it in some ways, and I know it's not going to hold to everybody, but it does give us a bit of a blank canvas for the artists out there, musicians that have this blank slate of looking at what's been done, what can happen, and what can it look like. I keep that as forefront of my mind as I possibly can, to keep that positive thought process going, because I know from talking to many business owners out there and families, there's a heavy level of burnout happening within the homes. Moms, there's one of our members has just written a blog that we posted on Friday, and it was parents, I should say, working from home and managing kids running around. And Ginny, you mentioned you have 2 kids, so you're working from home, you're managing your household, you're teaching them school, you're managing finances. It's very stressful, and I really do like your parting words, Jack. I think that, not even parting, because we're going to hear from you again anyways, but for this webinar. So thank you both so much for being here today. Really appreciate your time. I know from the Chamber's perspective, having our resort partner meetings every 3 times a week with Barrett Fisher and Jeff from Whistler Blackcomb has been tremendous, and we've definitely worked and started communicating a lot more and closer. So appreciate that conversation as it continues to unfold. So thank you both. I hope the next time we chat, which I'm sure won't be too far down the road, we'll be on full recovery plan and launching sort of next steps. And we'll definitely have you back for that. I think that would be really important for our members and broader business community to hear from you again. So for those of you that haven't caught on to the entire seminar or webinar today, we are recording these and we'll be loading them on the Chamber's website. So you can go back to them anytime. You can go to whistlerchamber.com and you'll be able to find this webinar along with other helpful tools to manage, helpful tools and resources to manage your way through this COVID-19 on the COVID-19 webpage. So we will stay connected with you through Business This Week and e-newsletters. So until then, thank you both so much. It's Monday. Have a fantastic week. I will be speaking with you at 1 o'clock today, I think, or 12 or 11 at some point. So thank you all.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.